Hi, I'm Dr. Andrea Stover, licensed marriage and family therapist, and you're listening to the Modern Day Romantic Podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, we are going to be talking about roommate relationships. So how couples kind of end up in a roommate type relationship with their spouse or their partner through time. This is very common, at least as a couples therapist. I mean, obviously people reach out because they want to work on their relationship. And I would say saying, hey, it's more like we're like roommates is something I hear rather frequently when a new couple comes in. Not all the time, of course, but it is kind of up there. So I thought it would be helpful to talk about, process, unpack. What is this, roommate relationship? What is it that's really going on there? And maybe what to do if you find yourself in one of those and you would prefer not to be in that state or that place with your partner. Okay, so I think right off the bat, what I would say is that oftentimes when a person or a couple says, yeah, we live more like roommates, there's no sex in the marriage or in the relationship, or very, very little. So I think this is one thing that really distinguishes being in your marriage versus feeling like we're just roommates or two ships passing in the night. And it, of course, doesn't all have to do with sex. It's not like, oh, if they were having sex, then it would be more than a roommate relationship. It's what that sex represents. So it's more about that emotional connection, that sense of feeling like you have a special bond with someone, that sense of feeling like there's something unique about us, about our connection, that it's not kind of just that blah, vanilla, we kind of settle into our own recliners and are just, seeing what the television has to offer us tonight kind of thing. So I wanted to say that right off the bat is that often the number one thing that comes next after the roommate relationship, or when you start digging a little bit, is we don't have regular, consistent, connective sex. Okay, so if that's our starting place, I want to say I like to have people reflect on, okay, well, is this kind of how we've always been? No, typically not. So when did it start to kind of fall into this and be relegated to this roommate kind of feeling between us? And I think what happens a lot of the times is couples don't quite know how they got there. It just happens to them. Life happens. So I always find it interesting to start from the beginning of a relationship. And I love hearing people's stories. Number one, I just love hearing people's stories. I love hearing how they came together. I love hearing what it was like when they, first kind of connected and what led them, if they feel like they actually chose to be in the relationship and they just didn't kind of float along into it. But, why their partner? Why that relationship? What was it about that? Because we can often mine for gold here. The beginning has a lot to be able to use as a strength, be able to use as something to maybe see if we have buried treasure somewhere, that kind of went missing along the way. Now, sometimes what happens when we're kind of in a new relationship and then we start to, we're progressing this step that society lays out for us all too frequently, it feels like. What happens is we become a little too comfortable or too familiar. So some of that, depending on your personality type, maybe that's exactly what you want in a relationship. And having a roommate relationship is not in and of itself a negative thing. Roommates are people too, and then to have like a functional roommate relationship, like to be able to coexist with another person. Hey, I think that's a success. You can't do that with just anyone. So I think that's another thing to kind of build on there. But what I would say is when we think about what at least the majority of people probably want to think a relationship is, a romantic love relationship, is that there's a lot of emotion involved, that we're feeling alive, we're feeling juicy, we're feeling like, our heart's kind of racing sometimes, or we just feel that warmth and that love. And I think it's a real letdown for a lot of people when you settle into the relationship and some of those feelings either fade or just don't come around as frequently. And I think this is a big piece of kind of this roommate relationship that couples find themselves in. So if we're looking at kind of the absence or lack of, emotional oomph, vitality, connection, passion, if we're looking at a lack of sex, well, what if we pair those two things together, right? I do think they can be linked. So sometimes, even though I know it may be awkward for couples who haven't had sex in a while or are just kind of in their own respective corners of the couch or on their recliners, I often have them try to come together for some type of touch, some type of getting back in your bodies with one another and really being able to feel, like, oh, wow, thank you. Like I'm receiving, massage from you and it feels really nice. Or I say that because sometimes people don't want to immediately go to the bedroom after it's been a while, which is understandable. But I think you have to kind of be open to being vulnerable, open to, making your body available, to yourself and to your partner, and not from a sexual place. I just mean being able to connect, because very often when we're in a roommate relationship and it feels negative, a part of us just doesn't feel like we're reaching for the other. It's like there's a boundary there. Like, yeah, we coexist, but that's yours and this is mine. And we don't always intermingle or commingle with the other in the ways that we do in the beginning of a romantic love relationship. So just to kind of reiterate, if you go back to the beginning and get really clear about what were some of the strengths, and I'm going to say, even though a lot of the beginning of relationships is infatuation, it's not all infatuation. There's a reason, in other words, that you're infatuated with that particular person and not that one over there or that one over there. So there's something specific that your partner held that was captivating or that was interesting or life affirming or energizing for you. And again, sometimes, we solve the mystery, we get to know the person and we don't quite feel that juice or aliveness. And we have to find ways to still keep it fresh, still keep it always growing, always learning something new, always experiencing something different. And not all the time, of course, but these are the things that really keep a relationship vital. All right. So if we can find that in your relationship, we can track it through time, trace it, see where did that dissipate? Where did that get buried? How did that go missing? Where did we start to relate to one another more as roommates than as partners, as life mates? There is obviously a difference there. And sometimes couples, it's, we had kids and then this life stressor and that happened and and there's just no time. And we're in these roles, we have so many roles that we have to play for so many other people that by the end of the day, all I want to do or all they want to do and all we want to do is veg. We don't want to have to think. We don't want to have to be on. Totally fine. But why is it not revitalizing? Why is it not renewing to your own spirit, to your own being, to be able to intimately connect with the other? Why does that feel like it's taxing? Why does that feel like a burden? And again, I know sometimes we're maxed out, socially, emotionally, just don't have anything left to give. But if we want to work through this, roommate relationship and get the romantic piece of it kind of revivified, then we're going to need to be able to have something to bring. And the cool thing about this is if you bring something, you're going to get that back through time. You will, if you're in a functional relationship. If it's merely, hey, we're roommates because we both kind of are just maxed out right now. If you give to your partner, I promise you will get something in return. Now, that's for the couples that, yeah, we're a good fit, we're a good match, we're just kind of in this phase right now. Okay, so there's that piece of it. Now, if we transition and we start to look at, hey, we're roommates because we can't quite acknowledge or we haven't quite been able to have the courage to say, we don't really feel we're one or the other, doesn't really feel, or together, we don't feel we're a good match anymore, or we're not really interested in being in the relationship. So all the feelings, emotions, side of the relationship's gone. And instead, what we have is a shared home. Maybe you do have children, maybe you don't. What I wanted to bring up, which I recently stumbled upon this, I thought it was so interesting, is something called a parenting marriage. And I wanted to offer this for anyone out there who is in a marriage or a long-term relationship, who has children, that maybe you don't really want to be romantically partnered with your spouse anymore, but you'd still like to, somehow find a way to co-parent. I think a lot of people in these roommate relationships are staying together for the kids, or maybe they did stay together for the kids and it's just kind of continued in this way. We're just still kind of, these two individuals living under the same roof. So this parenting marriage is a really interesting solution, I think. And what it is, and I'll put a link in the show notes if anyone's interested in learning more about it, is a married couple who decides we are no longer going to be romantically married. This piece of our relationship is done. It's over. So instead of their marriage being about the feelings, the romantic feelings of it, they decide collectively and work through that they would like to still stay married for the sake of children, and that the purpose of the marriage changes, in other words. And they together then are able to focus on, what the intent of this marriage is to help our children flourish, thrive. They get to have both of us, in the home together. Now, I know this could get really complicated, and I'm presenting it in a pretty simplified manner, and it would take a lot of work to probably get there. But I think probably a lot of couples, if they took the pressure off of themselves that marriage has to involve romantic love and what that means to them, such as, feelings of euphoria or deep passion for your partner and things like that, let's just be real. Some people are just going to say, I'll never feel that way about my partner. Like, I don't feel that way anymore. Good feelings gone, not coming back. And we have 2, 3, 4 kids together, so, and they're young and we're still wanting to, okay. So I'm not sure how all this would shake out. And again, if you would have romantic relationships outside of the parenting marriage, or what that would look like exactly. But I think it's a really interesting thing to explore, and possibly a creative solution. And it really tugs at the fabric of what we say and what we think a romantic relationship is supposed to be, a marriage is supposed to be, and instead repurposes it. That's what it does. It repurposes it for the intention and sake of raising your children together. So I thought this would be an interesting thing to present in this roommate relationship scenario, because so often, and it's so painful, people can live in this state for years and years, decades and decades, just kind of treading murky water, not really going anywhere. Like it's like this comfort, this familiarity, maybe feeling a bit bound due to finances, due to the life that you've co-created and built together. But ultimately, you just don't feel supported, connected, engaged, alive, in the romantic relationship. So the roommate relationship experience forces us to ask, okay, what do I make of this? And given the situation, given who I am, given who I know my partner is, given us as a couple, our history, what we want for our future independently and or together, what path might we want to explore, to try out, to see if and that's again, only if you are kind of tired of being in that roommate space, that roommate state, because I know that can slowly become a new reality. And it's almost like you started on the shoreline and you've drifted so far, into the middle of the ocean, that it's like, well, I might as well just continue to let the waves just take me, because there's no way we're going to reach shore. I can't even imagine, where the shoreline is right now. So, or what a shore even is. So I I know this is, it's so individual, it's so personal, and it's much more common than you think, this kind of roommate relationship. And the last little twist I want to put on this is, again, what I said earlier, that maybe being roommates isn't such a bad thing. Maybe to have someone to share in life with in that way, I think there is this negative connotation put on it, like, oh, we're just in a roommate type relationship. Well, that's a good place to start then. Or it's a good place to, okay, we're here and what do we want next? You're not going to be able to go back to the beginning prior to the roommate relationship setting in. You're not going to be able to go back there and live that. You have to integrate where you came from, where you are, and then choose how you want to go forward. And that might look different for each person in the relationship. And again, this is why it gets kind of complicated. One might want to say, let's just keep it as is. It's easier this way. Another might say, I can't live like this. There's more to life. There's more to a relationship. Or we've got this parenting marriage thing to look at now too, which again is a very interesting offering. I'll call it an offering. And I think through time, we're going to start seeing more and more of these kind of creative ways of managing the disappointment, the stalled kind of almost feeling like this romantic love marriage thing isn't quite working out the way I thought it would. And I need to know, do I just kind of dump this person and try to have it with someone else? Or is it more the whole idea of all of this? I was kind of sold a false bill of goods. And what do I want to make of that moving forward? So think about it. Maybe this is you. Maybe it's not you. If it's not you, totally great. But if it is you, or if it's someone you know, I think there's a lot in there. There's a lot to really reflect on. It's not, I think we actually normalize this and make it, oh yeah, yeah, this is what happens. But I don't think it has to happen. And I definitely don't think you have to stay in that space. So anyways, give it some thought, see what you think. All right, see you next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you're interested in learning about ways to work with me, head over to my website, themoderndayromantic.com. From there, you'll be able to contact me and learn a bit more about the customized intensives and retreats I offer both individuals and couples. Thanks so much for your support, and I'll see you next episode.